I'm Sherry Forsyth. I'm a peak performance coach, and one of the areas I specialize in is in the whole area of bereavement. Even though grief is primarily emotional, it actually is a full body experience, mind, body and soul. So what I'm speaking about today are mainly the physical and cognitive effects, in that I've discussed the emotional in other videos. So I hope that you will find this video to be of value. In advance, I apologize for the loud birds that you are likely to hear during this recording. The hardy-dars are endemic in South Africa. So for those of you South Africans who are living overseas, it can make you feel a little bit homesick. And for the others of you, I hope that you don't find them too intrusive. There's an area of study in science called PNI, psychoneuroimmunology, which is a whole study of proving actually that our thoughts affect our health, in that our thoughts will allow chemicals to be flooded into our bodies, and those chemicals have a physiological effect, which obviously then have a physical effect that will affect our health. So the whole study of PNI is very much borne out by what I'm speaking about today. So the minute we hear of the loss of a loved one, our brain and our body work together to protect us. This pain is too much for us. And so our brain releases lots of chemicals, hormones, neurotransmitters, and the result of that is it numbs us. It doesn't allow the huge intensity of pain to get through, because the reality of the pain at that moment is just too much. So our bodies are clever. They work together to protect us. That numbness that we initially feel gradually wears off as time goes on. As the chemicals decrease, so the feelings increase. And eventually there is no more numbness. There is no more protection. And when the brain and the body decide that we are strong enough, those chemicals disappear completely, and we are then able to take the full reality of the situation. And it's then that we as the grievers really need a lot of support. You might wonder, how long are we talking about? And it does vary obviously from person to person, but for me, with the loss of our daughter, it took about 9 months, and after that reality hit. So if you are caring for someone who is grieving, please be aware of the time when they suddenly might seem to be going backwards a little bit, and it might be because they are no longer being numbed. The reality is hitting them properly. Okay, so I also just want to reassure you that some of the symptoms that I'm going to be speaking about today don't stay with you forever. They do improve over time. So don't be distressed when you hear about some of the things that can happen to you when you are grieving. So immediately we hear about the loss. That shock, that trauma goes into every single cell of our body. So in other words, our whole body is traumatized as well as our mind. Okay? Our body is traumatized as well as our mind. What also happens is, because we perceive that we're no longer safe, we go into the fight or flight mode, fight, flight or freeze mode actually, where the amygdala, which is the emotional center of the limbic brain, sees that we are not safe. This is dangerous stuff. These emotions are too powerful. And hence that catalyzes the release of all the chemistry that is sent to protect us. When the amygdala senses that there's a threat, we go into fight, flight or freeze, as I've said. So you can find you withdraw, you can become very aggressive, blaming other people, or you can actually just freeze as if you're a deer in the headlights. All of those behaviors are completely normal. In his book, Forgiving the Unforgivable, a chap called Craig Stones talks about how when we are in fight or flight, the brain has a very strong need to control bonding, emotion, and store our highly charged memories. Now, all of those things are going to come into play when we have just experienced the loss or just heard about the loss of somebody very close to us. So our body, when it experiences a loss, limbic brain, fight or flight, that whole process that I've spoken about. Now, what you need to know is that the brain and the body, they cannot tell the difference between when something is vividly imagined and the reality. So very often what happens immediately after the loss, we relive that time over and over again in our minds. And what you need to know is then the body and the brain go into the full-on limbic system, all the chemicals, and it's trying, because the brain doesn't realize it's not actually happening, it acts as if we are in that trauma again. So we are repeatedly kind of putting our body under that huge stress over and over again. So it's a very normal part that we have flashbacks and we remember that trauma, but just understand what it is actually doing to our bodies. Can you imagine how exhausting? Well, that's one of the reasons why grieving is so exhausting. The other thing that I find really interesting is that when the amygdala is triggered into the fight or flight, it's very close to the pain center, and the pain center of our brain is also triggered, which is why we often feel physical symptoms when we are suffering from grief. The other thing is that when you are very closely bonded with someone, there actually is a neurological or a neurochemical bond between you and them. And when you die, that bond is shattered. Okay, so obviously then, when it's shattered like that, the brain doesn't really know what it's doing. That very close bond emotionally and neurologically is shattered, and we're in chaos, and grief is chaos. Grief can also be a very isolating experience, and as we are wired for connection chemically, neurochemically, it really helps if we can maintain physical contact with other people. It just kind of tells our body to calm down a little bit. So obviously you need to be careful with this, but hugging people, just touching them on the arm, the body will be saying thank you very much to that. Okay, so grief can feel very much like fear and anxiety. C.S. Lewis was the first person who actually kind of pointed that out. And the reason is because our limbic brain has gone on to kind of control our bodies. So this experience of the grief literally changes our brain. Our brain, it seems like it stops functioning and it just goes on holiday. It goes offline. We don't really know what's happening. So as our environment changes, our brain can change to accommodate that. And when we are in the state of confusion, we can do terrible things, totally irrational things. One of the members of our support group was driving out in her car. So first of all, she got into her car, reversed it, and she had forgotten to open the garage door, so she reversed straight into the garage door. Anyway, she got out of the car, lifted the garage door, reversed out, and she was so busy beating herself up for being so stupid that because she had ridden into the garage door, that she actually drove straight into her electronic gate. So those kind of things, even though they make us feel that we are mad, it's because neurochemically our brain doesn't know what's going on. So what kind of symptoms do we experience as a result of all this confusion in our brain? Okay, there's inability to think clearly, there's confusion, we have no logic, we battle with concentration. Okay, so memory loss is one of the major ones. We especially our short-term memory, we can't remember whether we turned the stove on or off, we can't remember where we put the car keys. And so if you are battling with that, please make sure that you put reminders somewhere, sticky notes or cell phone reminders, to help you remember the things that you need to, like meetings. The second thing is you suffer from mental exhaustion. Okay, we might feel that we've lost our competence, our drive. We can't trust ourselves in any kind of cognitive function at all. So I want to just point out to you that during the time of grieving, certainly in the initial stages, about 90% of our emotional energy is getting eaten up just with trying to stay on a relatively even keel, or try and make sense of the chaos that's happening in our brains. So we only have 10% left for kind of normal living, hence the mental exhaustion. Some people also battle with time confusion. In other words, they don't know what time of the day it is, or they don't know what day of the week it is, or they don't know what date of the month it is. All of those are completely normal. It's part of our brain is trying to adjust to this new reality. Another thing many people find is they battle with concentration. Many people who've been avid readers suddenly can't read at all. They might be able to read maybe a magazine article, and that's as far as it goes. Some people can't even manage that. So just know that it is part of the grieving process and that it will recover as your brain starts settling down into a new normality. We also experience brain fog, which is a characteristic or a symptom that many people who suffer from chronic fatigue syndrome, they suffer from that. So brain fog is brain fog. You're not completely clear, you're feeling a bit muddled, you're not really organized, you don't really, when you speak, you use the wrong words. Okay, so that is brain fog. And then the last one is the cognitive one, is that because our brain is trying to make sense and assimilate all this new information, our old pathways in our brain don't work anymore because this new scenario doesn't fit with what we know. It doesn't make sense. So our brain is trying to make this new information, in other words, the fact that we've lost a loved one, fit into what we know. And this doesn't work. So when the brain sees that that doesn't work, we have to form new pathways in the brain. And this process is called neuroplasticity. And in forming these new pathways in the brain, what we are trying to do is to show our brain that there are new and other ways of dealing with things, not how we normally used to. So as we are as our neural pathways are changing, so we change, and vice versa. And these changes can happen within seconds of each other or minutes of each other. And that is why the people who are grieving are very changeable. One day they need you to hug them, the next day they don't want you to hug them. And it's because the brain is busy trying to find new ways and new pathways. So as I've said, initially your brain is very busy and very overloaded, and we might feel like we're crazy, but we are not. We are just suffering from grief. So if you've suffered other symptoms, maybe symptoms I haven't mentioned, cognitive symptoms, please feel free to put them in the comment box, because it might help others to know that they're not alone when they are experiencing the same symptom that you are experiencing. So those are the cognitive effects that we experience. We also suffer from physical effects. The first one that is most often affected is our ability to sleep. we can have insomnia, which makes us very exhausted, or we can want to sleep too much. Grief has its own schedule. It has its time when it wants you to be awake, and it has other times when it wants you to be asleep. There's some people who wake up every night at the same time as their loved one died. Isn't that amazing? It's the unconscious body and mind working together. We really need our sleep because the process of grieving is very exhausting. We're doing lots of work. We're being very depleted. And sleeping at night is the one thing that refreshes us and replenishes us. The subconscious mind continues working, obviously, when we are sleeping. We need that sleep really badly. So if you are battling with sleep, certainly initially, not that I like to advocate the taking of lots of pills, but I do think if you go to your doctor and you can get a good sleeping pill, that will help you a lot, just to have the energy to cope with the next day. Okay, sometimes all we want to do is sleep, so we sleep far more than we normally would. And just be relaxed with that. Listen to what our bodies need and what our minds need. And just remember that we are trying to make space for this huge new reality. And it's very difficult. Our bodies and our minds are working very hard, and we need to hold them and support them as much as we can. The second thing many people suffer from are mysterious aches and pains. The body remembers and the body knows, and the body is stressed, and often the aches and pains are as a result of that stress. If you are worried about any of the symptoms, please make sure you go to your doctor and have them checked out, because often there's no physiological cause. So symptoms that I'm speaking about, many people feel literally as if they're having a heart attack. They have it's like their heart is actually broken. So they have chest pain, which definitely needs to be checked out. A lot of people have chest complaints like maybe a pneumonia or bronchitis, and it's because you literally need to get the sadness off your chest if you're looking at things holistically. But you can get headaches, you can have nausea, you can have stomach complaints, you can have appetite issues. The list is endless. Most of it is because your body is grieving, and it's almost as if your heart is saying to your body, feel the pain that I am in. I myself had lots of heartache, as if my heart was, well, it was actually broken, but there was a physical pain there. Okay, the third thing that changes is your appetite. Either you lose it or you overdo it. Most people seem to lose their appetite, and then it's very difficult to make yourself eat anything. So please try and be careful, and if you are battling to eat anything, make sure that what you do eat is really healthy, really good, nutrient dense, so that you're getting, with a few bites of something, you're getting a massive amount of nutrients going into your body. As a result of these, the shock in your body, it can lead to diabetes, which is obviously also related to your appetite. And also, when you can't sleep, I mean, all of these things are interlinked. When you can't sleep, that affects your sugar metabolism, and sugar metabolism is linked to diabetes. So the body is really amazing in how it tries to protect us, but it can also take a lot of strain. The fourth thing, as I mentioned, is chest issues, bronchitis, pneumonia. We are literally wanting to get the grief, the sadness. We want to unburden ourselves. And so in order to combat all of these things, the cognitive and the physical symptoms that we are experiencing, we really need self-care. So if you can forget everything else I've said in this video, but please be very, very gentle with yourself. Care for yourself physically. And what it is saying, what your body is then saying to your mind and your soul is, I care enough about the difficulties that we are having to take it easy. So have the candlelit baths. have the piece of chocolate, go for the walk that you feel you need. Anything that for you will count as self-care is really very, very important at this stage, and try and do it if you can every single day. You might just want to go and sit in your garden. That's beautiful. So all these symptoms that I've mentioned are a very normal part of grieving, strange as some of them are. If you have found this video to be helpful, I would love you to share it with people you may know who are suffering from grief, or just to share it onto your page, and other people then can access it as well. If you'd like to contact me, probably the easiest is through Facebook Messenger. Alternatively, you can contact me through email at sherryforsyth, spelled CHERRIFORSYTH @gmail.com, and I will happily help you if I can. As always, I thank you for your time, and I hope that you have found this information to be valuable.